What's up guys, this is Kephas, and I just wanted to take a moment to say how much I appreciate every single person who watches my videos and supports this channel. I've had so much fun publishing videos every single weekday, and the feedback that I've gotten for it has been overwhelmingly positive. So I will continue to keep up this pace, releasing videos every Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. The channel will continue to be primarily World of Warcraft focused, but I have enjoyed devoting Thursday's slot to a different game, like Super Mario Odyssey. But as we reach the conclusion of Super Mario Odyssey over the next several weeks, I will be looking to replace it with a new game. And I would love to hear your feedback in what game you would like to see me play next. So feel free to let me know in the comments below. Thank you once again for your continued support. This channel would not be what it is without you. We'll just move on. So we've taken care of the Gnolls, we've taken care of the Explorers League for now, and we need to go up here and talk to Mountaineer Stormspike. And this was probably my favorite part of the story, you know, in Loch Modan. So, and there's also this other quest you can do. There is one quest that kind of intersects zones from Elwyn Forest, and it sends you to Loch Modan, but I don't know if it goes anywhere or not, because I've never actually done it, because, you know, for leveling, it's usually not the best thing to do, but it's Elmore's Task. I don't know if you guys remember that one. You go to you're sent from Goldshire to Stormwind to Loch Modan, and yeah, it was kind of interesting. But anyways, so we are now dealing with kobolds. We've gone from kobolds, or we've gone from trogs to gnolls to kobolds now, and so it's like we're pest control basically. And so there's this one specific kobold that's kind of leading all the other ones, and he's kind of smart, they say. He actually calls himself the I think it's like what's he call himself? Yeah, commander. This would-be commander kobold. Oh crap, I didn't mean to go. Oh, we got another one over here. All right, that's fine. I'm not afraid of you guys. I'll take you down. You're just more XP. Not a problem. There you go. Look at this. I need to look into fixing this macro a little bit, because I don't know if anybody uses these that play hunters, but I do apologize if it ever just, you know, if you ever accidentally pull a bunch of stuff, it's part of the dangers, I suppose. Yeah. So, all right, we're going to kill these guys here, and then we're going to deal with Commander Kobold. That's just what I call him. He actually has a name, but yeah, easy up there, bruh. Don't be going in there killing them without me. Help me. Let me. I love. This is awesome. The fact that you don't have to group up now to share quests. It's going to be great in Battle for Azeroth too, because Horde and Alliance start on different continents. So we're not going to be dealing too often with, you know, fighting against each other. And I think they did that on purpose. If you think about it, it makes sense. Like, you know, you're going to start in the expansion, have the Horde and Alliance in different areas. That way there's not a bottleneck. I think that's pretty smart. So, you know, we'll see how that actually works out in practice, but I'm pretty sure that's a pretty smart way to go. The Alliance go to one spot, the Horde go to another spot, and eventually you come together. I think that's pretty cool, so we'll see how it works out. All right, so we've taken care of that, and now we got to deal with the Tunnel Rat Surveyors. This quest is going to probably be a pain in the neck, just because there are so many other people out here, but we will see. All right, so there's a Forest Lurker. We can take care of him. The cool thing, though, I made the mistake when you're doing this quest, is I went right for the main camp, but there are tons of outer camps that you can kind of go to get a lot of these guys. So keep that in mind as well when you're doing stuff like this. See, it does oftentimes pay attention, pay attention, I should say. That's what I'm trying to say, to the quest text, because you do find out more, like, you know, there are tons of camps around. Well, if you read that, you know that there's more than one camp, so explore. So yeah, it's pretty neat. Alright, so we're taking down these bears, and while we're killing these guys, you know, like I said, I have been in the Battle for Azeroth Alpha. It's been pretty exciting to kind of look around. I haven't done a whole lot yet, just because I'm kind of a selfish alpha tester, in that I don't like to spoil too much, so I don't delve too deeply, too quickly at least. I just kind of, you know, scope around, pick around, look at what I can, and see what's going on. I like to kind of look at the classes a little bit, but it'll get a little bit easier when mods are allowed. But one thing that I have noticed that I am a little bit concerned by, which a lot of people are, and you've probably heard about this before, are the changes to the global cooldown. And basically what that is It's a reason why, you know, if you have a spam button, like a rapid fire button, it's really not a problem, because in World of Warcraft, whenever you use an ability, there is a global cooldown, and so that forces a certain amount of time to go in before you can use another ability, unless you're using an ability which is not on the global cooldown. So in other words, you use an ability, and then you'll see like this little, like your abilities will have like a little clock, you know, like a little, the light around them will kind of go around like a clock, and that's to reflect the, like, I think it's like 1 second, I don't know how long it is, like this short global cooldown. So, and that's basically like, so when I use Flanking Strike or whatever, I can't use Raptor Strike until the end of the global cooldown, and that's basically how it works. But a lot of your cooldown abilities, like, you know, Aspect of the Eagle or whatever, those are off the global cooldown. Even defensive abilities like Disengage are also off the global cooldown. But in Battle for Azeroth, some of them aren't going to be off the global cooldown, which means that when you use them, you will have to wait before you can use another ability, whereas right now you can just use them whenever. Which, you know, there are reasons for this, and a lot of them basically involve, you know, Blizzard doesn't like the idea of having 5 buffs that you can just macro together, hit them all at once, and there's no gameplay there, is what they're thinking. And, you know, so I guess in a sense that kind of makes sense. They also kind of feel like, you know, adding this change in will make it so that you can make a choice. Do you want to use an attack ability to kind of finish someone off, or do you need to use a cooldown or a defensive ability to keep yourself alive? And it kind of creates that choice. Again, it kind of makes sense, but the problem with it is that, you know, for one, it's not going to affect every class the same way, because every class, you know, classes have a different, you know, amount of buffs, a different amount of abilities that they use in different ways, and having this change, you know, for some abilities it will affect them in some ways, and for other abilities it will affect them in different ways. And so I think one of the problems with an implementation like this, where you're going to change about how spells work, is if you're going to make a fundamental change to the game, then you need to make changes to the classes that reflect this change, and I don't think that they've done that. And so I think what you're going to end up having with a change like this is you're going to have some classes that are going to feel broken. You're going to, or at least, if not broken, if that's too strong of a word, they're going to feel clunky. They're going to feel slowed down in a way that's not fun. And I think that's what I'm concerned with here, is I feel like they see something that they feel like they need to correct, and they're kind of overcorrecting it a lot without really looking into how does this affect each and every class, because it's going to affect every class, and in what way is it going to affect every class? And if you're not going to take the time to adjust classes based on that change, then maybe you shouldn't be making that change at all. Maybe you should be looking into changing something else. We've actually got all those. Cool. We've killed all the guys. See, that was easy because we just went around to all the outer camps. That made that really easy. So, like, for example, a warrior will have like 4 or 5 buffs that they can use, and if they're all on the global cooldown, and then you have talents that add on a couple more buffs, well, you're not going to want to pick those talents now, because you don't want to add even more global cooldown buffs like to your rotation, because then you're going to be spending several seconds using buffs. That's not fun. That's crazy. And then, like, if you think about it, if during the majority of the time with that buff, you're going to just be using another cooldown, then you're not really getting the most out of that buff anyways. And so, like, that kind of becomes clunky, and you know, you're not going to be choosing talents to add even more buffs on top of that when, you know, you're already buffed to the max. Like, you know, you're already bogged down with so many buffs. I think that if they want to implement a change to how buffs work, then rather than putting them on the global cooldown and saying, there, it's fixed, I think they should just look into how we use buffs. Even though Survival Hunter is broken, there is an interesting option in terms of buffs, because you can alternate. There's a couple buffs that you can alternate. So you've got Aspect of the Eagle, I believe. I'm not super familiar with how this class, with the names and stuff of the class, but but you have Aspect of the Eagle, and then you have, Snake Hunter, I believe, and both of those will help generate stacks of Mongoose Fury. So what you do is during your Mongoose Fury window, you'll alternate using Aspect of the Eagle with Snake Hunter. And so rather than just using them both at the same time, you just have to be smart and use those at different times. So that's all fine and good, and I think it's good implementation. But it doesn't, for people who just are completely lazy and do not care whatsoever, they just want to use those buffs whenever because, they're, like I said, they're lazy, they're just playing simply. You've taken that option away now. You know what I mean? And so also when there's just regular buffs, like say this one gives you crit, this one gives you increased attack speed, well, rather than just using all that at once to get the full effect and just feel really powerful, you now have to use one buff to get the increased crit, and then you got to use the other buff to get the increased attack speed, and that takes like more time, and it's really not all that fun. I don't think so. But I don't think that buffing necessarily is fun when it's treated like a regular spell. When it's treated like, oh, you can do this thing and it's going to give you like this big boost, and then you just keep going with your rotation, to me that's more fun. And while I agree that having 5, well, I mean, I fundamentally agree that, I use macros that put everything together because it's simplification for people like me who have a hard time following, certain things and keeping track of cooldowns. But in practice, and the basic principle is, I can see where having 6 abilities on the macro is not necessarily good or fun. So I understand that train of thinking, but I think that what we're doing is we're overcorrecting that. And okay, so here's the main bad guy. You find out that he's a null. So this whole thing was kind of crazy. I kind of skipped over because I was talking about the macros. We'll get back into that in a second. So basically, you find out that these kobolds are possessing, or they're hypnotizing, they're controlling, because of geomancers, they're controlling the trogs, because trogs are of the earth. They're creatures of the earth. And you find out that there's a gnoll who's a foreman. So you're finding out that all of these pest races are kind of working together, which is pretty crazy. And so it's very chilling for dwarves, because dwarves are also creatures that were once of the earth. And it's very scary that there's a potential for the kobolds to control the dwarves as well. And so that's why it was kind of this kind of chilling realization that this is actually very dangerous for the dwarves. So this is probably the biggest threat that's come to the dwarves, besides Deathwing himself. At least in this zone, it's a pretty big threat. So I thought that was kind of neat. So anyways, back to the global cooldown thing. What's concerning though is, like I said, if you're going to bog down the rotations quite a bit, and also this idea that, Blizzard doesn't like the idea of macroing things. So that kind of scares me for the future of Gnome Sequencer. I hope that they don't, turn their attention to it and then break it because we don't want you to macro your abilities together. They probably do not like that people play this way. The thing, though, with me, my argument is, A, it makes the game more accessible, and B, it's not optimal. Like, if you're using Gnome Sequencer Enhanced, you're not playing at an optimal level. If you're playing competitively, then you're going to play the game the normal way, right? You're not going to use a mod like Gnome Sequencer Enhanced. So I hope that deters them a bit from breaking it and then trying to tell me how I should play the game. I mean, it's their game. They have the right to do that, but it's just going to make the game less enjoyable for people like me who are going to have a harder time keeping track of things without macros. So, there are times where I just kind of wonder why they implement macros in the first place if they don't like abilities being macroed together, unless they just like macros that are mouse overs. Maybe that's what it is. They just, if you make a macro that's a mouse over or at player, maybe we don't mind that so much, but we do not like when you take 5 cooldowns. Ooh, look at that. We are level 36. And you macro 5 cooldowns together. Well, my first answer to that is, well, then don't give us 5 cooldowns that do little things. Maybe homogenize the buffs a little bit and have fewer buffs, and then have those buffs work in certain ways that that encourage us to use them at certain times during the rotation. Maybe that's the answer, but that would require, some retooling. And rather than doing that, why not just, hey, these are on the global cooldown now, have fun. So it's like, take for example an ability like Disengage. It's not a super big deal, but if you're not able to use Disengage reacting to danger, well, then that kind of defeats the point of disengage, doesn't it? Because that's what disengage is. You're in danger, you need to use it to get out of danger. But in order to do that now, because it's on the global cooldown, unlike in live where it's not, you're going to have to wait until you're going to have to stop your rotation, wait for the global cooldown, which is only like a second, but it does make a bit of a difference, and then use it. And rather than just hitting it, reaction it, and having it work. And that might not seem like a big deal to some, but it does, it does feel kind of weird. Because like I said, it's something that you use it as a reaction. Like, oh crap, you hit it and then you move. And that feels normal. But when you hit it, oh, it's not working because of a global cooldown. I just used, Serpent Sting, which isn't really an ability anymore. But, I used an ability and then now I have to wait. It just does not feel normal, So it's going to affect different classes in different ways and different abilities in different ways. And to me, what it feels like ultimately is it's like, okay, so because we have decided, and this is like, let's say the government's like, okay, we have decided that all cars from now on can only travel at a maximum of 35 miles per hour. And that's just because we want to reduce car speed because it will reduce the chance for a wreck, at least a chance for a devastating wreck. So what we've decided to do is we're going to just reduce the travel time or the speed of all cars to 30 miles per hour at max. So now we're going to reduce highway speeds to 30 miles an hour, and all cars can no longer go above 30 miles an hour. And so like you have this good argument. Well, it's going to reduce the chance for a fatal car accident. And you're like, okay, that sounds good. And that's often what they'll do. They'll be like, here we go. We're going to do this change, and here's why. And there's a valid reason for why, but we don't look at the reasons why this is a bad idea. So if you reduce the speed of all cars to 30 miles per hour, well, you're going to slow down travel time, which is going to reduce the quality of life for people, which is going to increase the amount of traffic on the road, which is also going to go into reducing the amount of time, reduce the travel time for your car. So like that, you think about it like that, and it's like, there are cons as well. And I feel like that a lot of the cons for this change are being ignored in favor of, we have a good idea, we think. And we're not going to really look into why that's a bad idea. We're just going to, this is what we're going to do. And even though the vast majority of people that are in the alpha are like, this is not a good idea, this feels terrible, this is horrible. Even though people are like, this is not a good move, please do not do this, they're going to do it anyways. And I feel like that's, I am a person who thinks, what, we should at least give it a chance and look into it. Like, I think people in the alpha who are telling you, look, this is not good. This is not good for this warrior. It might seem okay in theory, and it might be okay for a couple classes, but in general, this is not good. This is horrible for this class here. And so I feel like maybe they should rethink their logic a little bit, and maybe consider doing something different. That's just my opinion, though, and we will see how it works out in practice.
How are you?
Okay, so we have dealt with the kobolds, we've dealt with the gnolls, and now we are discovering that the murlocs are involved as well. So now we have to deal with some murlocs. So let's get over there to the murlocs. Okay, so we are here now, and as I said, this is what's cool about how they did this is, as we go to deal with the murlocs, we find another Explorers League document, we follow the path down to this dock, and there you go. It's not, I mean, you could kind of miss it if you just run straight over here. You might miss that one, but in general, you'll likely, if you're paying attention, you'll likely see it on your mini-map. You'll see a quest icon, and that's where you'll pick it up. So now we've got 2 of the 6 Explorers League documents. I think there was only one document that was kind of out of the way for me that I did not notice on first glance, but it was kind of along the path of where I was supposed to be going. So now we are dealing with murlocs. We have to collect their glands because they emit an odor that can be used as bait for them, and it kind of drives them crazy. So we got to collect them. We've also got this other little quest line, which I really didn't mention in the story because it really wasn't super important, it was kind of a neat idea though. So like, obviously because of what's happened to the lock, there is massive ecological damage to all of Loch Modan because this used to be a gigantic lock that was dammed up. And so there were fish, there were, sea creatures inside. It was very big. And when it drained, all those sea creatures died, and then they're rotting on the fields, which, A, is gross and stinks and is disease-ridden in and of itself. B, it's attracting buzzards, which also provide or bring disease, which is not good for Loch Modan. And since, they're really close to, the loch, the town, they have to really, they have to be careful, and so we got to deal with the buzzards as well. So I kind of wonder, what would happen. Okay, so if there's a town like Felsamar, it's living near the loch, which is a great place to live because there are fish, there's tons of resources, it's really good. What do they do now, in terms of feeding people? Maybe that's why we had to fend for ourselves and get our own food, because food is scarce now, because they used to rely on fish, and now those fish are gone. Those fish are completely gone because there's no more loch, which is kind of sad. Will they export from wetlands? What's the deal? I kind of wonder. All right, so we're gonna try to get in there if we can. Yeah, we're kind of competing with people, but like I said, it's not too bad because we can share progress with each other. Which again, like it's so cool to think about. Before, like, even though we're on the same faction, it used to be. If someone else tagged something, you could not get credit for that, and that sucked. But now, even though there are people here, and at the very worst, what you're going to have are areas picked clean before you get there. At least now, if someone's there with you at the same time, you can work together and get and progress at the same time, which really improves on the flow of questing. There was nothing worse than having to wait all the time. That really sucked. So we want to stay away from those murlocs over there because they don't give us nothing. But yeah, one of the best changes they ever made to this game was the ability to share loot with people that aren't in your group. That was one of the best things they ever did. One of the best changes ever, because it was a consistent horrible feeling that was there before. So big applause on that one. Like I said, I think it's really going to improve the whole experience leveling through Battle for Azeroth, because we're going to be with people of the same faction, and that's going to help out quite a bit. Because we still don't share loot with people on the other faction, which kind of makes sense still, I think. It's annoying sometimes. At least we can share loot and progress with elites, right? Which makes sense that they did that too. So basic mobs, we don't share progress on. We're not working together. But when it comes to the really big bads, we join forces and work together. And I think that's kind of cool how that works. Only times it doesn't work is when I get frustrated, because I'm like, dang it, I'm missing out on quests because of these jerks. But it's sometimes, if you want to keep that feeling in the game of they're enemies, we're not working together, we're enemies. Sometimes you got to have a few inconvenient things in there to kind of convey that feeling. And not that you should like actually hate the people that play Horde. If you're Alliance and you're Team Alliance, you play Alliance all the time, you should resent the Horde. And if that creates some resentment towards the Horde players, that's a good thing. So I think that having that it should be friendly, of course, because it's just a video game. It's actually kind of funny, because when you look at like people that play this game talk, a lot of times they treat Alliance versus Horde almost as serious as like we Americans treat our politics sometimes. It's pretty crazy, especially with Battle for Azeroth. Like, I've seen heated debates, like, amongst Alliance. It's kind of weird, because it's like, it's just a game, you guys. I get being passionate, but geez, like, people are like, Sylvanas, like, they treat Sylvanas like she's Donald Trump, which is kind of funny, because I feel like Trump is more like Grosh, but but no, seriously, it's kind of funny, just like how serious people get into this stuff sometimes, like, which I think it's cool to get into it, but I think it's like, sometimes like, okay, calm down. We're not dealing with, you're not really a member of the Horde, okay? This isn't real. You don't have to get all fired up and mad at the opposition. It's kind of crazy. You support Garrosh, you're a racist. Like, whoa, calm down, okay? Like, it's getting too real now, okay? Just a game. I actually like Garrosh quite a bit. I've always been a fan. I was, the reason why I say, and not to get political, but the reason why I say he's like Trump is because, well, the reason why I liked Garrosh was because he was one character that wasn't afraid to speak his mind. He wasn't afraid to say how he felt. He called out people that other people did not call out. He had balls and all that kind of stuff. And if he had stayed the way he was, I've said this so many times, so, you know, if he had stayed the way he was initially, I would have continued to be a big-time Garrosh supporter because I was a fan of that. I felt like the game needed, and I think it still does, it needs some badass characters in it, you know, that just aren't afraid to say it like it is, that are kind of like an anti-hero, and that they are, technically they're a hero, but they're not a goody two-shoes. Like, you know, we don't need more Thrall. We need more, you know, like, we don't need John Cena, we need Stone Cold Steve Austin if you're a wrestling fan, right? So Thrall is basically John Cena. He's the Boy Scout goody two-shoes guy, and, you know, it's fine to have him, but when you have him and everybody's like him, or everybody's just like a villain, then, you know, I feel like it's nice to have an anti-hero. And an anti-hero doesn't necessarily do bad things that are really bad in nature and intent. But they're not necessarily goody two-shoes either. But they do ultimately do the good thing, and that's why they're called anti-heroes. So, in my opinion at least, a lot of people try to say the Joker is an anti-hero because he's a villain that people like. That's not what an anti-hero is. An anti-hero is just essentially, well, at least the way I understand an anti-hero, it's someone who's essentially a hero, but they're not a goody two-shoes hero. They don't live by that goody two-shoes code. Sometimes Batman feels like an anti-hero because he's willing to do things that are questionable to get things done. Jack Bauer from 24 to me is an anti-hero because he's willing to step outside the rules sometimes. In my opinion, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not what an anti-hero is. Maybe it's like, but that's always what that's what I always thought an anti-hero was. So anyways, we got to get a couple more gills and then we can return to town. So we might as well go ahead and do that. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by hitting that like button. And feel free to share it with your friends so they can enjoy it as well. You can also subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter at TheKephas to be notified as soon as new videos are posted. Thanks for watching, have a wonderful day, this is Kephas, until next time.